TIFU by buying a used car with a trunk full of stolen goods, returning it to a rich LA jerk who called the cops on me anyway. Alright, buckle up, because this story is a ride. It went down a few months back, but honestly, it feels like a fever dream I can't shake. I'll be thinking about it 1 minute, just laughing at the absurdity, and then the next, I'm grinding my teeth from frustration. So here's how a too-good-to-be-true deal on a used car snowballed into one of the worst headaches of my life. It started with my buddy's younger brother, let's call him Ryan. Now, Ryan wasn't exactly the clean-cut, reliable type. He's been on and off with issues for years. Drugs, bad friends, random late-night calls to help him out of sketchy situations. You get the picture. His family, who'd been on the receiving end of his chaos for far too long, finally decided to step in and get him some real help. This wasn't your regular rehab either. No, his family had cash, and they weren't about to let him end up in some cookie-cutter place. They enrolled him in one of those ultra-exclusive, spa-like rehab centers up in Malibu, where the views alone are supposed to heal your soul. And if that didn't work, well, at least they'd get him out of their lives for a few months. Since Ryan wouldn't need his car anytime soon, his family was trying to get rid of it. They asked around, seeing if anyone was interested, and that's how it ended up in my hands. They offered it to me for a whopping $400. A Honda CR-V for $400? In LA, where even the most busted-up car still costs at least a couple grand, this was a deal I couldn't pass up. Sure, the CR-V was a bit rough around the edges, but I figured, what the hell? I could fix it up, clean it out, maybe make it a second car or flip it for a decent profit. I had a good feeling about it, which in hindsight is laughable. The minute I got the car home, though, that good feeling evaporated. This car was a mess. I'm talking the kind of dirt and grime you only see on a car that's been through years of neglect. Fast food wrappers shoved into every crevice, stains on the seats that were, frankly, concerning, and a weird smell that seemed to be a mix of old French fries and gym socks. I won't lie, I was horrified. I mean, I knew Ryan had his issues, but who the hell lets their car get to this point? Still, I was committed. So, armed with a mask, gloves, and an army of cleaning supplies, I set to work. The cleaning took hours. I pulled out enough trash to fill a dumpster. Every time I thought I was done, I'd find another pocket full of junk, another mysterious stain to tackle. I don't think I'd ever used that much cleaner in my life. I scrubbed, vacuumed, and polished until the CR-V started looking like an actual car again. At some point, I even convinced myself that all the work was worth it. Sure, it had taken half the day, but now I was looking at a car that was, at the very least, drivable. I stepped back, hands on my hips, proud of my work. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. After all that work, I was ready to take it for a spin. But as I circled around to check everything, I noticed the back tire was flat. Of course, right? No big deal, though. I figured I'd just fill it up and keep an eye on it. So I inflated it and went back to admire my work, only to come back a couple hours later to see it deflated again. This car was really testing my patience. Since it was an older CR-V, it had a full-size spare mounted on the back, so I decided I'd just swap it out. Should have been easy enough, except my jack was too small to lift the SUV high enough. Great, just another problem to add to the list. So, I figured the car's own jack had to be somewhere. I opened up the trunk, lifted the carpet, and that's when I saw it, a huge, crumpled black garbage bag shoved under the mat. I don't know why, but I froze. Something about it just felt off. I mean, who shoves a garbage bag under the mat like that? For a moment, I thought, it might just be more trash, but curiosity got the best of me. I carefully opened the bag, half expecting it to be full of random junk or maybe even some kind of weird stash. But what I found inside had my heart racing. Inside was a stash of electronics that looked like it belonged on the floor of an Apple store. A MacBook Pro, an iPad Pro, an Xbox One X, some high-end Bluetooth speakers, 2 pairs of Beats headphones, all in perfect condition, all tossed together in this bag. It was like I'd just stumbled upon a treasure chest. I'm talking thousands of dollars worth of tech, all crammed into a black trash bag in the back of this beat-up CRV. At first, I was stunned. Who in their right mind would leave this stuff lying around like that? But as I looked closer, a sinking feeling settled in. There was no way this was here by accident. I tried to think logically. Why would Ryan, who could barely hold onto his own phone without breaking it, have all this stuff? Then it hit me. Maybe it wasn't his at all. Maybe it was stolen. My stomach twisted at the thought. Here I was, holding thousands of dollars worth of potentially stolen goods, and I'd just brought it all home. My mind raced as I tried to figure out what to do. I didn't want to keep it. If it was stolen, that would make me an accomplice, right? I was about to close up the bag when I noticed the laptop had a profile name on the login screen. The name looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. So, like any curious person would, I plugged the name into Facebook. And there he was, the guy who owned all this stuff. Let's call him Ethan. Ethan had gone to my high school, a few years ahead of me. Back then, he was one of those kids who always seemed to have more money than everyone else. Flash forward a few years, and his Facebook profile looked like he'd walked straight into LA's influencer scene. Every post was a humble brag, him posing in front of luxury cars, jet-setting to tropical destinations, flaunting his six-figure investments in crypto. His entire page was a highlight reel of his life, and everything about it screamed, "I'm living the LA dream." Part of me thought about just keeping the stuff. I mean, it's not like he'd miss it, right? But the other part of me knew I couldn't do that. I decided to be the bigger person and reach out, thinking, hey, maybe he'd appreciate it. Maybe he'd even throw me a reward or something, considering I was saving him thousands by not just pawning everything. So, I sent him a message, keeping it vague for Ryan's sake. Hey, I bought a car and found some stuff that looks like it might be yours. Let me know if you want it back. Within minutes, Ethan replied. He didn't say thanks, didn't even ask how I ended up with his stuff, just asked where he could pick it up. I was a bit put off, but I brushed it off, thinking maybe he was just in a rush. He promised to be over within the hour, and I couldn't help but hope he'd be grateful when he saw everything. Maybe he'd hand me $100 or even just shake my hand. Little did I know, that was pure wishful thinking. An hour later, Ethan pulls up in a brand new Mercedes G-Wagon, looking like he'd just walked off a Hollywood set. Designer clothes, shades, this aura of entitlement, it was honestly kind of ridiculous. He didn't even acknowledge me, just walked straight up, eyeing me like I was beneath him. When I handed him the bag, he barely looked inside before launching into a story about how his place had been broken into. According to him, they'd stolen all his electronics and the keys to his Ford Raptor, which they'd obviously planned to come back for. He seemed more concerned about his Raptor than about the stuff I'd returned. No thanks, no appreciation, just a quick nod, and he was gone. I figured that was the end of it. But the next day, I get a knock on my door, and it's a detective. Are you the one who contacted Ethan about his stolen property? He asks. My stomach dropped. Before I knew it, I was sitting in my own living room, being questioned like I was the one who'd broken into Ethan's place. They asked where I got the car, who sold it to me, whether I'd known about the stolen goods in the trunk. Every question made me feel like I was digging myself deeper into a hole. Over the next few days, I had to keep going back to the station, filling out statements, practically begging them to believe that I was just some guy who'd stumbled into a bad deal. They made it clear that they weren't going to drop it until I told them everything, including where I'd gotten the car. Eventually, I had to give them Ryan's name, throwing him under the bus just to save myself. I didn't want to do it. I mean, Ryan was already in enough trouble as it was, and I didn't want to be the guy who made things worse. But the detective's questions were relentless, and I felt like I was one step away from getting cuffed myself. So, I caved and told them everything, hoping it would be enough to get them off my back. Ryan, unsurprisingly, didn't take it well. He was already deep in rehab, trying to clean up his life, and now he was facing criminal charges for grand theft. My friend, Ryan's brother, barely talks to me now. I can't blame him, but it stings. I'd been trying to help by getting the car off their hands, by doing the right thing with the stolen goods, and somehow, I still ended up looking like the bad guy. And Ethan? He completely ghosted me. After I handed over his stash, I thought he might at least acknowledge the trouble I went through, maybe check in after the cops got involved, or even send a quick thanks text. But nope. Not a word. The guy took his stuff, disappeared back into his Lux LA life, and left me holding the mess he created. I'd done him a massive favor, saved him thousands of dollars worth of electronics, and he couldn't even give me the courtesy of a thanks or anything for my trouble. Just silence. As for the car, it's still sitting in my driveway, a constant reminder of this whole ordeal. Every time I look at it, I can't help but think of all the hours I spent cleaning it, all the hassle I went through, and the fact that in the end, all I got out of this nightmare was a beat-up CR-V and a whole lot of regret. I still think about that initial feeling I had back when I first got the offer for $400 and thought I was getting an incredible deal. If only I'd known then what was coming, I would have run as far away from that car as possible. So, now I'm left with a barely functioning car, a friend who doesn't trust me, a guy who thinks he's done me a favor by showing up, and way too many memories of sitting in an interrogation room, treated like a criminal. All for trying to do the right thing. People say karma rewards the good deeds, but in this case, I'm still waiting. TLDR, bought a used car, found a bag full of stolen goods in the trunk, returned it to the rich jerk who owned it, got treated like a criminal, and ended up losing a friend and gaining nothing but a massive headache and a clunky, unwanted car.